In the meantime, there is a letter to all presenters that is apparently very important, saying, due to strict fire codes, we have to ask any attendees that do not have a seat to please exit the room, and please do not stand in the doorways. We are very sorry for this inconvenience, but this entire program will be shut down by the City of Chicago's fire chief. He is on the property and has warned us of this possibility. Luckily, there are still plenty of seats open, especially near the front. Also, if any of you fall asleep, this session will be on the web within 24 hours. It'll still be on the web within 24 hours. Or if any of you can't make it here, it'll be there here for you to see. I think this letter is to all presenters, so probably. Is the fire chief attending the conference? Yeah, we're teaching him how to build a Drupal site. Fire safety tips with Drupal. How not to descend into flame more. Okay, well, let's get started. My talk is going from zero to distribution using features, profiler, and Drush make. What that means is basically I'm going to start with a just plain Drupal site, and if any of you were here sort of in the time before the session started, you might have seen me installing that. So yes, it is really just a plain Drupal site. No tricks. No, I'm not playing any tricks. And I'm going to build a fully working Drupal distribution in the course of this session. So it's going to be one big long live demo, and we're going to hope nothing blows up. If any of you here are not ready to have your minds blown, you can now leave the room. Let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to build just a very, very basic Drupal distribution. It's going to be a news website where we can post news items, and then we can view those news items. So let's download some modules. I downloaded the CCK module. I'm using Drush here. Drush is a very useful tool that is not within the scope of this session, but it's very cool. So I'm going to download CCK. I'm going to download file field, image API, image cache, and image field. It's downloading those modules. Now I can enable them. So what this is showing is basically you start off, when you're building a Drupal distribution, it starts off pretty much like any other Drupal site. You just configure your site pretty normally. I forgot one of the key modules. So the only special module I'm going to download is features, which is going to allow us to package up our configuration, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And I'm going to enable that right here. What? Oh, font bigger, of course. There we go. It's kind of going off the screen, but that's okay. So I'm going to set up a content type, just as I normally would. Call it news item, like that. I can add a field to this content type. Image. And apologies for going kind of fast through this, but I have an hour to build a full Drupal distribution, so as you can imagine, it might be a little tight. So it's just a normal Drupal site, really. I'm configuring it like I would any other Drupal site. I'm now adding a text field to the content type. Looks like it's configured pretty well. I'll add a image cache preset as well, because I'm uploading images that are like full-size images off a camera, so I want to compress those images down to a smaller size, so I'll call this size medium. And I'll scale and crop to 200 by 200. That looks like a good size. So that's, one more thing. I'm going to set the image to display as a medium image. And that's my basic Drupal site. Now the interesting part is how we make this into a distribution, but first I'll just test it out by creating some news items. So in in a bout of serendipity, a chicken managed to look into a camera. So this is obviously a very important item to put on the news site. We can see the image of the chicken looking into the camera. This happens to be actually one of my hens at home. I have 5 chickens who are very awesome, and they make eggs, which is great. And then, see, after that happened, then we have to talk about what happened afterwards, and then the chicken looked to the side. Chicken looks aside, and they looked away from the camera. What? No, the chicken's name is Shostakovich after the composer, Dmitri Shostakovich. Dmitri, just like me. Guess who got to name that one? So that's our basic news site. We can see here on the front page, there's a list of all our posts. It's a very basic site, but it'll suffice for the purposes of this presentation to show you like how we're going to build a distribution out of this basic site. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to export it as a feature. So what a feature is a collection of components of a Drupal site that are packaged up in a piece of code as opposed to in the database. So what that means is when I went to the content types page and I configured a content type, I configured it and Drupal saved it to the database. Now the problem with this is that it's really not portable, that's the main problem, is if I give someone this database, then they're going to get, for example, all the posts that I have as well, and I don't, if I want someone else to download a Drupal distribution, the distribution part means it's sort of a platform on which they can put their own posts, but they don't want to have my posts. So I need to figure out a way to export this content type separately. And the way I'm going to do that is using features. Oh, I forgot one more thing, sorry. We're going to give this an ugly theme. So we need to demonstrate what it looks like with a different theme, so here's a really ugly one. A feature is basically a bundle of configuration, such as views, settings, what are some other things here? Content types, image cache presets, etc. So I'll just jump right in. We'll call this feature news items and describe, let's say, a feature for news items. And then what we do is we add the components that we want to export as part of this feature. And if it doesn't make complete sense right now, I think it'll start to make sense in just a moment. So as you can see, we exported the content type news, and that actually automatically detected that we have 2 fields associated with that we just created. We created a image field and a subhead field, and we also created an image cache preset called medium. It also detected the fact that we depend on these other modules. Now I'm going to set an additional dependency. We can set dependencies for this feature. We want comments on our news posts, so I'm going to depend on the comment module as well. So that's saying basically that this feature, when you enable this feature on your Drupal site, it's going to create that content type news along with its associated fields, its image cache preset, and the dependency of comment. Now that that's done, all I have to do is download it. It automatically creates a tar file right here. And we can look in this tar file. Sorry if it's a bit hard to see there. So what it is basically, one moment. It's a module. As you can see, it has a .module file. And so it would be enabled like any other module. It's just a special type of module called a feature. And what that means is that there are these 2 files here which enable the content type and other things that we've exported. So what I can do is I can just copy this module into my site's all modules folder, and from there I can see on the features page that I can enable this news item feature. I can save settings, and nothing will happen. And that's because we already have the content type created on our site. But I could revert this site to to a more plain state. We can delete the content that we created. And delete this content type. So now this website is basically just the same as it was out of the box, except with an ugly theme. As we can see, all the modules have been disabled, etc. Or most of them have been disabled. So now I could go back to features, and the only thing that remains is this code that I put in right here in my sites all modules folder. There's this news items feature that I created. All that remains is that. So what I can do is I can download it, I can enable it with the features module installed, save settings, and we can go to create content, and the content type is back. And not only that, everything should be fully working. So we could recreate this initial post, and the image and everything works. So that's the basics of features. Is anybody here confused and would be willing to share why, so I can answer a question? Or is anybody confused in the form of a question? Yes, right there. I'll repeat the question. Or yeah, the microphone's right back there, like right behind you.
So you had a couple of custom fields that you used, and you captured those in your initial feature. If you have another content type later that also uses those shared fields, and then you want to put those in a different feature, does that create a conflict?
That's a really good question. And that so features is actually, it's sort of confusing, and it's not so great about figuring out which belongs to which. So it won't create a conflict. What will happen is if you export two different content types that share the same field in two different features, the same content types will be exported by both features, and they won't create a conflict. They'll only, they'll work just fine. The only potential conflict would be if you had different field settings for each one, but I think that it would probably take the second one as the overridden thing. Other things that can be exported with features that I haven't demonstrated here include menu items. You can export menu items with features. Taxonomy vocabularies using a special patch to views, which I may or may not have gotten in. You can export views, of course. I don't have any of those on the site since it's a little simplistic for that. And many other modules have integration into features. And so one key thing about features is that a feature is supposed to be a kind of a package of functionality, and when you export things to a feature, such as content types, views, etc., you don't want to export your whole site to necessarily. I mean, you might, but you don't really want to export necessarily your whole site to a feature. A feature, as the name implies, is kind of an isolated piece of functionality. So if you can, I mean, there are certain, like, there's a specification around best practices. I don't know exactly, like, the rules are a little bit confusing, but for me, like, the general best practice I follow is when you have a piece of sort of an isolated piece of functionality, like this is the news part of your site, and so what that involves is, say, the content type, the fields, the image cache presets. If there are any views, it'll involve that. The menu item pointing to the news, that you can all export as the news feature. Then if you have, for example, a different part of your site called the forum, where you have your forums and any views associated with that, etc., then you would export those into separate features. And so what that allows you to do is, for example, say you no longer want a forum. Now you can just disable that feature on your website, and the forum is gone. Or if you want to build another website that needs a forum, you just drag that forum and you copy it over into your other website and you enable it, and you don't get the whole website because you didn't want the whole website. You only get what you wanted, which is the forum. Any questions on this, or should I move on to the next part?
What if a feature includes a view and you decide that you want to disable that view? Can you disable it, or is it locked in as long as the module is enabled?
That's a good question. So when you enable a feature, it sort of creates a default for whatever things you're enabled. So for example, it'll create a default for the content types, and it'll create a default for the views that you have. But you can always override those. So for example, oh, this is kind of small. If I was to go to content types and then edit this news content type, or we should look at the features first. So here you see right here the state is default. So that means it's sort of using the defaults of the feature. If I wanted to edit something, say, we'll call this description instead of body. Now if I reload this page, it's overridden. So that means that the changes on our site overrode the feature. So what we can do is we can recreate this feature, and we go to download it. You can also edit any components if you would like. Expand this, and here is our re-downloaded feature right there. We can now go back to view this, and we see it's back to default, because what we just did is we took the stuff on the site that we overrode, and we put it back into the code of the feature, and we made it a default again. Any other questions about this? Yes.
Now, the features exports modules, and I see that you're enabling them via the features interface. What's the difference between that and enabling them via the normal modules interface?
The features interface, I think actually when you install features, all these features depend actually on the features module, because the features module allows exporting certain things such as CCK fields, etc., that by default Drupal core doesn't. So you need the features module to be able to use any features. And once you have the features module installed, I mean, you can enable it from either. The benefit of enabling it from the features interface is that here you see the state it's in. You can recreate it, and this state allows you to explore your feature. So you can see right here, like the different components of your feature. You can see the CCK fields, the image cache presets, content types, dependencies, and anything else that would be in our feature. You can see right on this page. Also, you can recreate it from here. So that's really the only difference. I mean, you could enable it from the modules page. I like the features page better. So either works. Good question so far. Any other ones? Yes.
If I have a feature and I want to split it into two, that's difficult because I don't want to. In the meantime, I don't want to lose my content types and my views. Is there a way to get rid of the fact that it is bound to the feature module?
I don't think there's a native way to split a feature into two. You could do it like with the code. You could alternately. If you look here, this is sort of the definition for a feature of. These are where the feature defines like what stuff it exports. So what you could potentially do is you could create another feature that or two more features that create export subsets of that, enable those features, and then disable the original feature. I'm not sure if that would work though, but it's worth a try. It's a pain. Okay, gentleman right here. What's your name? Gentleman right here, Josh, says it's a pain. We'll take his word. I don't want to try it right now. I have lots more content that needs to be presented, but I think it's kind of important to stop on the way for questions. Yeah.
Do features tend to be small things or big things?
Do features tend to be small things or big things? So, as I said, what I think the most important thing is to kind of have a feature be encapsulated and separate from another feature. Whether that's big or small, that depends. Like this news feature, I would say is fairly small, but it could be pretty big. I mean, also big and small are very relative terms. So I think that it could be either one. Okay, one last question. I'll answer your question.
How do you refresh yourself on what the fresh commands are for features updates, stuff like that?
How do you refresh yourself on what the commands are? You can ask the guy who wrote them. He's right there. Or you could check the documentation. I'm sure there are documentation pages about that. And if there aren't, you can create them. You can refresh yourself and then create them so that everybody else can refresh themselves with the documentation. Yes?
I was just wondering if there's any sort of performance considerations if you built a site, say, using tons and tons of features versus the normal way, whether there's any performance difference.
It's faster, actually.
Yeah?
Yes. So the performance consideration is you should use features because the thing is when for example, Views pulls code from the database, it's slow because it's got to figure out like what that code means in the database, whereas in a feature, it's already in PHP. So features are actually generally faster than when you build it on the Drupal site. So for example, actually, never mind. That's not an actual example. Okay. Next thing, DrushMake. So what DrushMake does is it allows you to assemble modules into a Drupal site, sort of bringing modules together into a Drupal site, and so it's basically like Drush DL, so downloading modules with Drush, except more automated. So what that means, the first thing I'm going to do is very quickly I'm just going to package this feature up into a zip file or tar file. Okay, so this is now a tar file. I'm going to put it just at localhost/newsitems.tgz. So I'm going to create first a basic make file. So I said that there would be no code involved. There's no PHP code involved. That doesn't mean there's no non-PHP code involved. This is a different code format. So yes, I kind of lied a little bit, but this is much easier than PHP because instead of like a Turing-complete language, this is just a declarative language where you tell DrushMake what needs to be downloaded. So it's pretty basic. The first thing we need to say is we need to tell DrushMake that we're using Drupal 6, and I'm going to predict the future and predict that someone's going to ask the question, does it work on Drupal 7? And the answer is yes, everything works on Drupal 7. The only thing is I feel more comfortable standing up in front of all of you and presenting on Drupal 6 and Drupal 7, and that's why we're on Drupal 6 and not Drupal 7. The next thing is we need to define API equals 2. That just tells DrushMake that we're using DrushMake version 2. Because DrushMake version 3 is very unstable, and I recommend you not to use it. In fact, the version I recommend you to use is DrushMake version 2.1, I believe. Yes, that just happened to magically come out yesterday. Also, in case you were wondering, I wrote DrushMake. Well, don't clap yet. I haven't showed you how cool it is. Okay, so what we basically tell it is we give it a list of projects to download. So these can be modules or themes or whatever. So I'm just going to look at here. So here are the different modules we have. Basic, we have CCK, features, file field, image API, image cache, and image field. So let me see if I can remember that. Okay, I think that's good. Yeah, and then one more. Oh, image cache. So this is the basic syntax. So what this means is it's telling it, here is a project, and this project, here's a new project, and this project's name is image cache. And so DrushMake now sees, okay, I have a list of 6 projects, and I'm going to download each of those projects. This is the most basic way to add these. I would not recommend doing this simply because it's a little unstable, because what this will do is it'll just download the latest version, and you might not always want the latest version, or because, for example, you could create this make file at a time when the latest version is 2.1, and then you could hand it to someone else, and then the module maintainer releases a new version, 2.2, and they make their make file, and they have version 2.2, but the other modules only work with version 2.1. So you want to figure out the versions of the modules that you're using. So we're using CCK. So the slightly more advanced syntax looks like this. Module and then version. So there is a shortcut for this, but it's kind of complicated, so I'm not going to demonstrate it. Features, I believe, is version 1.0. Let's see if I'm right. Yes, I'm right. Okay. Oh, I have no idea what version file field is at. So you could just kind of have to go through these, and actually probably the better option would be to see what version you're running on your site. It just so happens that I downloaded all these modules just now, so I know I'm fairly confident I'm running the latest version. Let's see, CCK 3.2.9, filed field 3.9, image API 1.9, image cache 2.0 beta 10, and image field we're running version also that's weird, also 3.9. Okay, so what this will do is this will download these respective versions of these modules. Now we can get even more complicated. We can download modules that are, so this is the basic syntax for how you download a module that's on Drupal.org. Now we can download a module that's not on Drupal.org, and we're going to download it from localhost/news_items.tgz. So what I do for that is project news items. So this is the name of the project, news items. And then I want to tell it, the first thing we need to tell is that it's a module, because without knowing, Drushmake doesn't know, like, is this a module, is it a theme, etc. Drupal.org provides this information through this XML interface about all the, like whether it's a module, whether it's a theme, what the latest release is, etc. And so I can use that for these projects, so I don't need to tell it that it's a theme or a module. It'll just figure that out. But for this, I need to tell it the type is module. So now we tell it the download type is get, as opposed to, we have different ways you can download things. You can download things by CVS, boo. Since that's now deprecated, you can download things by Git as well. You can download things with Git. You can download them from SVN, and I think those are, I mean, you can download them from CVS if you really want, but I wouldn't recommend it. And then you can download it by just getting a file like this. So, so here I'm saying download it by getting a file, and then I'm giving it the URL as this, and if you want, you can put it in quotes. It looks prettier that way. I don't really think it makes a difference. Having written the parser, it doesn't. But some people think it looks nicer or whatever. So there's that. Now we can Drushmake this, and there's only one more thing, which is I probably want to download Drupal itself. So we can now run drushmake, and then the name of our make file, news.make. Oops. And then we can tell it where. So I already have a folder news. Let's call it news2. So now it's going to make the drushmake file news.make into the folder news2. Oh, I forgot one thing, which is if we want to download drushmake, you need to first download and install drush, which I believe there are instructions for on the drush module page. Once you do that, all you need to do is drush dl drush make, and it'll figure out that it's a drush extension, and it'll put it in the relevant place. So I actually already have it installed, and no, I don't want to reinstall it because I have a checkout from Git. But while I was showing you that, this downloaded we can see that it downloaded Drupal, it downloaded CCK, etc., and it even downloaded our news items. Oops. What happened? There we go. So we can see here it created sites, all modules, and it downloaded the 7 modules that we had before. That's the basics of Drushmake. Are there any questions about that? Yeah. Can you automate the process of generating the drushmake file? Yes, you can. It's currently broken, but there's an issue in the queue that I need to commit that I'll probably do sometime during DrupalCon that's going to fix this. So there's a command that you can run called drush generate, or drush, I think it's now called make generate, which will automatically generate a make file from your Drupal site. The problem with this is that it can be kind of hard to determine, especially if you have like a feature like news_items where there is no like it doesn't really know about a source, so it can be hard to figure out where it's getting the information or where you're getting these modules from. But it can do a pretty good job at guessing and including version numbers and that kind of stuff. So yes, it is possible to automate, just not very easy, and also currently broken. But I promise you all, there will be by the end of Friday, I will have a new release of Drush Make that has it fixed. That is my promise to you. Let's see if I keep it. So, any other questions about that part? Yeah.
Can you specify which directory these go into, like features?
Yes. Can you specify which directory these go into? You most certainly can. The way you do that is so let's say we want these 6 to go. Oh, in the Drush Make 3.x there is a very cool feature that allows you to do that, but I'm not going to show that because it's kind of very complicated. But what we do is we can first give it the expanded version, which is like this. So the other one is this syntax is a shortcut for this syntax, basically. And so if we put it in the not shortcutted syntax like this, then what we can do is we can say project cck subdir, short for subdirectory, equals contrib. And we can do that for each of these. Just like that, and then we can put this one in the subdirectory features. And let's try Drush making that. So it'll take a second because it is now going to re-download all those projects. Well, that's going. Does anybody else have any other questions? Right here. Is it possible to specify patches? Yes, it is also very possible to specify patches. I don't have any patches to show that off with, but what you would do is you would say projects, for example, image cache, patch. I think it's patch. Let's find that out. Yeah, patch. Okay. Project image cache patch equals, for example, http drupal.org/files/issues/something.patch. So that is how you apply a patch. And in a Drush make file, if you want to include a comment, you just start the line with a semicolon. So what is common practice is to comment right before the patch the issue number, if there exists one, for this patch, like that, so that whoever comes along next can see where you got that patch from. Any other questions? Will Drush make pull in dependencies automatically? No, it will not. You have to specify those manually. For example, as you can see here, image cache depends on image API, and image field depends on file field, but we had to pull those in manually. There is talk about changing that on Drupal.org. The problem with that is it's actually a fairly complicated problem to solve because you have packages of module. Where these things are not actually modules; they're projects. So, for example, the file field module contains file field project contains two modules, file field and file field metadata. And file field metadata depends on the getID3 module, which, for example, I do not have installed on this site. But some people might want that, other people might not. And so it gets kind of confusing, like which dependencies do we pull in? Okay, this finished downloading. Now I can show you that. Oh, wrong one. Now it filed it away into contrib features. Any last questions? Yes. How do you handle dev versions? Can you be a little bit more specific? Okay, getting the latest dev version based on a date. The way I would recommend doing that is getting it from a repository such as Git. If you get it from Git, you can specify the latest commit hash. For example, in Drushmake, the latest commit hash was this string of characters. So you can just specify when you check out from Git, or in your Git checkout, you can specify that you want that to be the latest commit. And I don't have enough time to go over this because I need to get on to the next part, profiler. But Drushmake is very well documented, so you can download Drushmake, and in the Drushmake download, there is a readme.txt and a example.txt, and it should be, or example.make, and it should be in one of those. Any final questions on Drushmake? Can you say it one more time? Oh, okay. Drushmake currently does not. Oh, the question is how well does it deal with multi-site? Currently, Drushmake does not deal with multi-site and puts everything in site/all. There is talk of changing this. There will be action of changing this in Drushmake 3.x. This is one of my big plans for the next version of Drushmake. But currently, it's not yet implemented, so it just puts everything in sites/all. However, it can do profiles, and we're about to see that after I take this gentleman's question right here. Oh, okay. Now I guess I'll show profiler. By the way, we can applaud later, but the guy who wrote it is also the same guy who wrote the features drush commands, and he's also still sitting right there. But we'll hold our applause till I can show you how cool that part is. So, what profiler is a library of a bunch of PHP code, and what it does is it makes creating install profiles so much easier. And the way it does that is instead of creating an install profile by writing a bunch of PHP, you can do it in this the exact same syntax that we're using to write a Drushmake file, typically called the .make syntax. So I'll start assembling the distribution right here. Oh, quick terminology thing that I probably should have said at the beginning. What's typically regarded as the distinction between distribution and profile is an install profile is just the code that runs on the initial installation of Drupal. That'll, for example, enable modules, set a theme, etc. Whereas a distribution is the installation profile plus a Drushmake file that has downloaded modules. So a distribution is like an install profile plus all its dependent modules. Let's call this news_distro. Or let's just call it news. So the first thing to do is we put the make file in. Now we need another file called, two more files. One called news.profile and another called news.info. And these can be very handily copy-pasted from the profiler documentation, which is not linked to on the project page. I do have edit permission for all projects on Drupal.org. Okay, so right here, this is the only thing that we need to put in the .profiler. And this is PHP. Don't be scared. You don't need to do anything with this except change this to the name of your profile. Once you've done that, you're completely free of PHP. You don't need to write any more PHP. Now comes the fun part where we get to create our installation profile. So the first thing we do is we declare a name. We'll call it new site. Then we're going to give it a description. Then we will give it dependencies. So what the dependencies are modules to enable. Now we've already downloaded some modules using Drushmake. Now we'll just enable those modules in the install profile. So, for example, we need to enable news items. We need to enable, what else do we need to enable? So the nifty thing about this is that this one will automatically enable all dependencies. So news items depends on features, comment, image field, and image cache. And image field also depends on file field, and it depends on the text module. But image field also depends on file field, and file field depends on CCK, so it'll enable all of those for you. So I think this is probably the only one we need to enable. Then we can set a theme, so we'll put our ugly theme push button, which, by the way, I would not be able to show you in a Drupal 7 demo because it's gone. Thank God. And Drupal, removing eyesores from the internet. Well, that's questionable, but well, I'll let the designers deal with that one. So now what we do is we can package. Yes, this is all we need to do for a working installation profiler, and that's why Profiler is so amazing. And I'm going to clap. Now, granted, I haven't showed you how cool it is because I haven't actually installed it, but we're going to do that right now, so it'll be fine. Okay, we need to copy and paste 2 more lines of code, these lines of code into the Drush make file, and we need to update one thing because the beta 1 version is broken, and so we need to download the beta 2 version. Unfortunately, the beta 1 docs point to the beta 2 or beta 2 docs point to the beta 1 version. I think we needed beta 3 to fix this. So in his credit, James here, the maintainer, I came to him at about 12:30 today saying, I'm about to give a talk on this, and your beta 1 version is severely broken, so I would appreciate a new release, especially since the bug's already been fixed. And so he did create a new release, but he didn't have enough time to update the documentation. But thank you for that. Okay, so I'll do 2 final things. First of which is bundle the news distribution up into a other way around, into a tar file or a gzip tar file, and then I'll create a overarching make file, newssite.make, which has the same things. And then we're going to download Drupal, and we're also going to download our profile called the news profile. And so type is profile. Download type is get. And download URL is there we go. And this should do it. So let me just create us a new database. Okay, I created a new database. Now we can drush make news site dot make news site. So if you can see what it's doing is very cool. One of the many features of drush make. What it did is it downloaded, retrieved information out of Drupal. It downloaded Drupal. Then it downloaded this news profile, and then remember in the news profile we created a file called news.make, and it found that news.make file, and then it saw, okay, I need these other things, so it downloaded CCK features, etc., down to the news items feature that we created, and so now our profile or our distribution. So this is what I would call right here. This is what I would call a distribution, and so that what that means is that there are no. There are no modules in sites all modules. Instead, the modules are in profiles and then news. And here we can see this news profile we created plus the modules we have nicely filed away into subdirectories and the library profiler that we downloaded with this little chunk of code right here. Now that that's all done, what I can do is I can just go to localhost/news site, and this is where the cool part is. And now we see that instead of the standard Drupal installation screen, we get a first screen that allows us to select our installation profile. And so what we want to select is news site, the profile that we've just been developing. We can save and continue. Oh, I hate this. There's a way in DrushMake to solve this. If you run the DrushMake command with --prepare-install, it'll fix this. But I didn't, so. OK. We can put in our database information. Now it'll go, and if we're lucky, it'll work. Yes. See, installing news items modules. So that means it got all the modules, it installed them, etc. This is the part, like right at that previous screen is exactly where it blew up the last time I gave this presentation. We made it past there. I think we're going to be good. Oh yes, this is my email address. If you have any questions, you can email me right at this address. And now I'm scrolling away from it, so that was your chance to copy it down. Yeah, OK. So as you can see, the blocks are gone because we didn't export the blocks as part of the feature, because you can't export blocks as part of the feature because of the way they're built. And that's where the context module comes in, which is also beyond the scope of this talk, but also very cool. But the context basically introduces a whole different way of building sites, which I don't really want to get into right now. So that said, we can go to node/add. We see our content type that we created right all the way at the beginning show up right here from the feature that we have exported. We can create a news item just as before. And I can create a node. Ooh, this is broken. Right. That's something that we overlooked. So there's a module that we forgot to enable, the image API GD2 module. I forgot to enable that in the installation profile. But, well, at least it didn't completely blow up. There we go. It works. Yeah. So that's all I have for content. That's how you go from nothing to a Drupal distribution, and we made it in 45 minutes. Any questions? Yes. What? Can you go back to the distro makefile? Sure. Can I go back to the distro makefile? This one or the other one? Yeah. So what this is doing is it's just downloading Drupal and the profile, and then the profile. When it downloads the profile, it sees that the profile wants to download other modules, and it downloads those modules. OK, question.
I just noticed in both the makefiles you specify the Drupal project. Do you need to do that using this?
Actually, right at the last second, I snuck it out of the other one.
You pulled it out.
So
Okay,
if we open this up, oh, I did. You're right.
Oh.
Sorry about that. That's a mistake. You don't need to, and it's a bad practice. You should not specify a Drupal project inside a profile makefile. That was a mistake. Sorry about that.
Cool.
I thought I snuck it out of it.
I have two questions. One's really small. Who is this phantom maintainer of these other two DrushMake or the Drush features?
This is James. James, can you stand up?
Yeah, please. Thank you. And secondly, okay, I run my distributions on an Azure server, and what invariably happens is that my site maintainer will decide that they want this block over there, and then after that I'll add something else to my feature and push it out, but you can't update it without overriding all of their changes. Has there been any work done on a way to do that?
No, there's really not a good way to do that. Basically because, I mean, it's the standard problem, like you have two people editing the same thing. What do you do? That's a hard problem to solve, and what I would recommend doing is checking it into version control, whenever they make a change, they can export it to a feature. When you make a change, you export it to a feature, and then kind of work like that. But there's not really a good solution, just as the same way as if we both edit the same line of code to two different things, there's not a good solution for how to merge them. Generally, it usually has to be done manually if they're on the same line. Okay, next question.
Serendipity. My question dovetails nicely into that one. Features module. You seem to know quite a bit about it. Can you describe the process for updating a feature? You make a feature, you need another field to your CCK. Can you sort of 10,000-foot view, how does that actually supposed to work? I've tried to work with that and fallen on my face.
I'm not exactly sure I understand what you mean, because I think I explained it, but I'll try explaining it one more time, and then you can tell me if that's right, or if that's what you were looking for. So basically, when you create a feature, you export a certain set of stuff, and then you can go back, you can change that stuff,
Right.
and then you want to re-export it. So when you're on the features page, you just go to recreate, and then you go to download feature, and that's it.
Yep. Sorry. Let me specify what I actually meant. Yep. I get what you're saying here. Doing it in the context of the same site. When you're pushing this out to other people, when you're providing your feature out in the world, and you say, all right, this is version 2 of my feature module. How is that supposed to properly work?
It should work pretty well. I mean, if someone changes something from the default, excuse me. So for example, if they were to change an image cache preset, then the intended behavior is that the new feature will change any of the non-overridden items, but anything that's default in here anything that's overridden should stay overridden, and so whatever they have edited should stay as what they edited, but anything they didn't edit should be updated. So I mean, it's the same process really, that you tell someone else to copy it over, and it should automatically update.
Just to interject, so is he referring to possibly drush feature update, drush feature revert?
Not that is that what you're referring to?
Nope, never used drush.
Yeah, so I think what he means is if you take a feature and you give it to someone else, and then you give the next version of your feature to someone else, how does that work?
What he said.
So you can use drush to do everything that you're doing through the GUI here. You can use drush just as he was using to use the make file. It's just a command line. And you can use drush feature update, which will pull information out that's been overridden, overridden status. We'll pull it down into the code, into the module, right? And then you can put that in SVN, you can save it, however, and then you can use drush feature revert. So that person checks it out onto their machine with SVN, and they can hit revert, and those changes will now be in their current instance.
Fantastic. Clearly, I have study to do.
Yes, but I think that's the answer he was looking for. So
yes,
cool. Thank you.
So if I have my distro and I boil it down to only the profiler and only the drush make, and that's how I've given it to other people, and then they make installations, how is then the best practice to push my updates, say like upgrading modules or something, to people who already have made installations?
That's a good question. So what you can do is you can repackage this just the same way, and in this profiles directory, just the same way as you'd update any Drupal site, you copy over all the files except the sites directory, and what will get included with that is you'll copy over the profiles directory. So any modules that you have here in profiles, and then your profile name, and then modules will get updated, and they'll get overridden and changed to the new version.
So effectively what they do is they build another code base and then they just copy it over?
Yeah.
Okay.
The profiler module. How do you create a profile where you want to change things in your installation profile that aren't actually covered by the options in the profiler module? Is there a way to use both?
Yes, there's definitely a way to use both. So what you can do is in your .profile file, you can create a function, profile name underscore, I believe it's install. Yeah, install, and then you just, in here, you can do any other things that are not covered by profiler. Just like that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Sure.
If I include a module as a dependency in my feature, are the configuration settings for that module exported along as part of the feature?
Not by default. you need to export them manually. And one thing that'll help with that is a module called StrongArm, which I think I meant to download as well and configure, but I didn't. What StrongArm will do is it'll allow you to export certain variables that can't be exported otherwise with features. So if any of you are like using this stack, StrongArm is definitely a module that I would recommend.
Hey, thanks. Hey, this is from the features page on Drupal.org, and it says it has a sneaky statement. It says a feature is a collection of Drupal entities which, taken together, satisfy a certain use case. And I think you already talked about this to a certain extent, but it seems kind of sneaky because it's really a features is like a collection of artifacts that end up getting used in use case, but it doesn't. They real rarely is they're going to satisfy a single use case. They're going to really the artifacts are going to end up satisfying like a bunch of different use cases, and then once you get the artifacts bound up in the feature, and then you start coming at the use cases and changing the artifacts, then I think you already addressed it to a certain extent, and I was hoping you could just elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really about best practices of how you build it. So you could kind of go either way, and you could kind of export everything as a feature. But for example, one thing that you might want to do is when you're creating views, like if you have two things that are like two views that maybe are a little bit similar but are associated with different features, like instead of making them displays on the same view, you should create them as two separate views, and then you can export them as separate features. So yes, it's possible for components to be used by multiple, or components to be needed by sort of multiple things on your site, multiple feature in the sense of not features, but in the sense of like what a client would recognize as a feature, like news part of your site. Yeah, you should try to like keep it as separate as possible, and sometimes it's not possible, but generally it tends to be fairly doable.
You deleted the chicken pictures before creating the feature. Is it possible to include nodes in the feature?
No, it's not possible to include nodes in the feature. If you want to be very evil, then you can download the exportables module, write 10 lines of code with exportables, make nodes exportable, export them with features. But I would not recommend doing that. One place where you can include nodes is in the profiler. With using profiler, you can create nodes, and that's in the documentation.
Two questions. Can you have more than one profile installed into a site?
That is a good question, and the answer is no, you cannot. And that is a bad thing, but there is something we can do about that. We can file patches for Drupal 8. Except beyond that, there's not much we can do. However, one thing you can do with the profiler module is you can't really extend two, but you can extend a profile in another profile the same way that a theme can extend another theme. And that could allow for a lot of potential, and it is potentially possible that using profiler you could create a profile that just is the sum of two other profiles.
And my other question, is there any plans for Drupal.org to add features as something you can search and share?
I don't know if there are any plans on Drupal.org. If you want to, so it's recommended not to share like just an exported feature on Drupal.org. Typically, modules on Drupal.org have some of their own code to them, but
I was hoping there would be a separate space.
I don't know if there are any plans for on Drupal.org features.
Thank you.
I guess there are no more questions, and if there are questions, you can come up because we're out of time. Thank you all for coming. And click to take the survey link. Don't forget to take the survey. Assuming.